Hey YouTube, it's Davion from WUNAX here. Everybody's playing it, so let's talk about how to beat it. Of course, I'm talking about Fire King, and with the brand new Fire King structure deck, this deck has really been gaining a lot of popularity. And as you know, this deck really only gets better. The deck has been performing really well in different tournaments worldwide, even making a top 32 at a YCS. If you haven't gotten 3 of the Fire King structure deck, you're definitely missing out on one of the best structure decks in Yu-Gi-Oh history. But anyways, let's talk about the deck list that you're seeing on screen. The deck list you're seeing is really just a base list. It's not a completed list. It is missing cards, so obviously I don't suggest that you copy this list to a T. It's not a perfect list, it's not a completed list, but it's kind of just like the skeleton of the deck. There's cards that need to be added to this list, cards that, I just wasn't thinking about when I originally made the list. Whatever, cards need to be added to the list. This deck has a lot of options. There's a lot of different ways to play this deck. So, you don't have to play it in this, in the way that I played it in this list. Obviously, there's the Dogmatica engine, there's the Wanted engine. I know the Wanted cards are very, very expensive, so some, budget players are playing the Dogmatica cards, or some people are just playing more hand traps or a more pure build, whatever. There's so many different options, so many different ways to play this deck, and I really think that that's why this deck is so popular and is so good. One thing I do want to say about this deck list, though, is that I really, really, really like the Rescue Ace cards. The Rescue Ace Impulse and the Rescue Ace Fire Attacker. I think for a 4-card engine, I think it's really, really good because, you're going second. You draw Impulse in your opening 5. You can just tribute Impulse, special the Fire Attacker, draw 2. So basically that's drawing you into more combo. It's drawing you just whatever. It's getting you more cards in your hand. You're drawing more hand traps. You're cycling through more cards. Regardless, you're seeing more cards from your deck. So obviously it's not mandatory. I just personally really, really like it. I think it helps you get to the rest of your hand traps. It's a fire monster. Also, if you draw it for turn, you can always just normal summon it, activate its effect on field, target like a Baron, a Dispatter, whatever, a number 90, any of those cards that are strong negates. You can just go right ahead and target those cards with the normal summon impulse effect, and they're forced to either chain it or they can't use it for the rest of the turn. So Impulse, I just feel like, is really good. Fire Attacker is just a free draw too. Even if you draw the Fire Attacker in your turn, if you normal or special a Rescue Ace card, you can special summon it. So that's not as good, but obviously there's a lot of cards that destroy, like the Field Spell, so you can always just destroy the Fire Attacker if you draw it and you still get the bird effect. But like I said, definitely not mandatory. But yeah, past the deck list, let's talk about how to beat the deck that has been doing so well. Alright, so the first hand trap I want to talk about is Ash Blossom. Obviously, we all know what Ash does. This card has been amazing for years and will really only continue to be amazing for years to come. It's actually a really good hand trap against the Fire King deck, though. One of my favorite spots to hit Ash is the Fire King Island, the field spell for the Fire King deck. Basically, if you Ash this, it stops them from getting their search, but really importantly, it also stops them from destroying a card. So, they can't trigger the bird, they can't trigger, any of their effects that would, activate off a card being destroyed, like the ones in hand that let you special summon. None of them get to trigger because, nothing's getting popped. So that destruction effect is really a huge part of the Fire King strategy. You can always also Ash the normal summon, like the level 1 bird. I'm not great with the names, but the level 1 bird, you can always Ash him. That card's really strong. It lets you get to Sanctuary, which is going to get you to Island. So you can always Ash the normal summon bird. Another really, really good spot to Ash is the Wanted or the Nadir. it kind of keeps them into their, into their Fire King engine, which makes their end board containable. So you want to kind of be able to contain their end board. You don't want them to be able to go too crazy. And if you ash the Wanted, you ash the Nadir. Like I said, if they still have gas past the Wanted, past the Nadir, then whatever. But it's going to keep them into their Fire King, which is just going to make their end board easier to deal with. But obviously, another spot you can always ash is the Pot of Prosperity. Especially if they're starting with pot. If they're starting with pot for 6, for a fact that's going to be where you want to ash. If they're potting at the end of their combo, you probably don't have the ash anymore. But whatever. You can always ash the Pot of Prosperity. Pot is crazy. It's always an option to ash. Alright, so the next hand trap I want to talk about is Infinite Impermanence. There's a couple of spots to use Imperm. The first one is definitely one of the best ones, and it's the level 8 bird. You can stop this card from destroying from the deck, and if you're stopping it from destroying from deck, it keeps them away from the Kieran, keeps them away from sending the level 4 for the Reborn. It keeps them away from sending that other level 4 that searches. It stops them from getting a lot, and also if they're a lot of time they're gonna send that level 4 that searches, and then during the next standby phase they're probably gonna search the Kieran. So if you're able to stop that and keep them away from getting Kieran, then you can pretty much stop them from getting to the Xyz, because if you can keep them off of Kieran and the other level 8, then they can't really use the Sanctuary line, and it just kind of protects your plays more. And then other things you could Imperm, the Snake Eye Ash. That card is amazing. So powerful. Snake Eye Ash is a great spot to Imperm. Ponix, great spot to Imperm. Gaia Bellstar, a great spot to Imperm. All of those cards are very strong. All of them are great spots to Imperm. And yeah. Alright, so the next hand trap I'm going to be talking about is Joel and Mockingbird. I mean, there's not too much to talk about when it comes to Joel. You're just drawing after the first search. It's not the best hand trap against the Fire King deck, but it's definitely not bad at all in any way. It definitely helps. It's just not the best hand trap to use against the deck. But like I said, it's not bad at all. If you're playing this card in your main deck, you don't need to side it out, going into game 2. The card's not bad, like I said, just not the best against the deck. Alright, so the next hand trap we are going to be talking about is Ghost Bell. This card actually has some really good options against the Fire King deck. You can stop the special summon back of the WUNAX, I believe that's how you pronounce it, the level 8 bird. Obviously, that's going to stop them from getting the destruction from deck. You can stop the Kieran special summon from grave. That's going to stop them from popping a card on field. Also, Arvada, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Arvada's second effect special summons one from grave. That's another good spot to drop the bell. Also, you can really stop the whole Dogmatica engine by dropping the bell on the Nadir. Keeping them away from the Dogmatica engine is obviously a really good choice because it locks them into the Fire King package. And then last but not least, Snake Eye Flamberg Dragon. Whoa, couldn't pronounce that one for a second there. That's a hard name. But this card is so crazy. This card's crazy strong. It has multiple effects that are very powerful. But its third effect, I believe it is, lets you special summon 2 level 1 monsters from your graveyard. So this is just a fantastic spot to drop the bell. That card is so strong, and special summoning 2 level 1s from the grave is really powerful, especially when it's like Ash and Ponix, because then you're going search Ponix, search Sunburn or Sanctuary. It's just so much advantage. Alright, so for the last slide, I wanted to talk about honorable mentions. So for the first two cards for honorable mentions, Ghost Mourner and Effective Veiler, they're pretty much the same exact thing as Imperm, which is why they didn't get their own slide. Really, Imperm is the best option of the three. If you're gonna play one of these two, I suggest Veiler over Mourner, but Mourner still isn't a terrible card against the deck, and that's why it's in the honorable mentions. DD Crow, it kind of accomplishes the same thing as Bell in some ways. In some ways, it accomplishes more than Bell, but in the sense that I kind of want to stop my opponent from getting the max amount of advantage. Like Bell, it kind of stops the whole special summon effect. Like for instance, with the Flamberge Dragon, this would only stop one of the special summons, where Bell would negate the entire effect. So I just feel like that's better. D-Shifter, obviously, you have to be able to play a deck for it. I can't play this card in my deck. Nibiru, definitely a strong card against the deck. They don't always play into it, but if they play into it, this card is pretty good, pretty impactful. I would honestly suggest in playing Nibiru. Ghost Ogre is actually really spicy. Like, Ogre on Island is so good, but the issue is that's kind of the only good opening for this card. And if they have Sanctuary on field, it won't even resolve. So it's like, how good is it? If it's just the Fire King Island, it's really good. But if they have Sanctuary, it's just not as good. And most of the time they do have a Sanctuary, so I don't really suggest playing this card. But if you're a budget player and this is all you have, the card isn't necessarily terrible against Fire King. Skullmeister is similar to Bell. That's why it didn't get its own slide. And then the Triple Tactics cards, both are fairly good against Fire King. And the last two cards that I didn't mention on any of these were Forbidden Droplet and Forbidden Chalice. I feel like Imperm is definitely better, but I feel like Droplet can be very strong against the deck. Going second, if you can play a deck that can play Droplet. If you play a deck that is trying to send cards already, then Droplet is a very good card against the deck. But you just kind of have to be playing a deck that can play Droplet. But yeah, that's all for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next WUNAX video.